What would you do if the place you called home, your sanctuary, was suddenly barred from you by those who claimed to protect it? For Jacob Harrow, this wasn't a hypothetical. It was a cold, gray morning when he approached his gate, the one he'd built with his own hands from cedar planks a decade ago, only to find a shiny new lock glinting in the dawn. No key, no warning, no explanation. Just a note from the Homeowners Association, taped carelessly to the wood. Security upgrade. Contact HOA for access. His blood boiled. This wasn't just a lock. It was a violation. Jacob's property sat on the edge of Willow Creek, a quiet stretch of land where the nearest neighbor was a half-mile away. He'd chosen it for the solitude, for the freedom to live unbothered by the petty rules of suburban life. The HOA, a recent imposition after developers bought up nearby lots, had been a thorn in his side for months. They'd sent letters about his unkempt wildflower garden, fined him for his weathered barn, and now this changing his gate lock without consent. But what they didn't know was that Jacob had just filed a legal land trap, a carefully crafted claim to protect his property from their overreach. He'd spent weeks researching old county records, uncovering a forgotten easement that gave him sole control over the access road. The HOA's move was about to backfire. He stood there, staring at the lock, his breath visible in the chilly air. His first instinct was to grab a crowbar from his truck, but he paused. Smashing it would feel good, but it wouldn't teach them anything. Instead, he pulled out his phone and called the HOA president, Marjorie Klein, a woman whose voice dripped with condescension. "Mr. Harrow," she said, "this is for community safety. You'll get the key once you comply with our regulations." Jacob's grip tightened. "You're on my land, Marjorie. You don't get to decide who comes and goes." Her laugh was sharp, dismissive. "We'll see about that." That's when the twist came. As Jacob hung up, a battered pickup rolled down the road. Out stepped Clara, a wiry woman in her 60s, her face etched with lines from years of hard work. She wasn't a neighbor, never seen her before, but she carried a file folder stuffed with papers. "Heard you're fighting the HOA," she said, her voice gravelly but warm. "I'm Clara Tate. Used to own the plot next to yours. They pushed me out 2 years ago." She handed him a yellowed map, her hands trembling slightly. "This shows the original land grants. Your easement? It's ironclad. But there's more. They've been bribing surveyors to redraw boundaries." Clara's revelation hit like a thunderclap. The HOA wasn't just overstepping, they were corrupt. Jacob and Clara spent the next hours in his kitchen, poring over documents. Her knowledge of the land's history was a lifeline, filling gaps in his own research. She'd lost her home to the HOA's tactics, forced to sell when they choked her with fines. Her story wasn't just a warning. It was a fire in Jacob's chest. He wasn't just fighting for his Gati, was fighting for everyone they'd bullied. By noon, he drafted a letter to the county, attaching his legal claim and Clara's map. The HOA's lock was a misstep. They'd assumed he'd roll over. They didn't know he'd been preparing for war. The next day, Jacob drove to the county office, filing an injunction to halt the HOA's actions. The clerk, a young man with a nervous smile, confirmed the easement's validity. "This is airtight," he said. "They can't touch your access." Jacob's smirk returned. Back home, he found a new note on his gate. "Urgent. Contact HOA immediately." He ignored it. Days later, a sheriff arrived not to evict him, but to serve the HOA with a cease and desist order. Marjorie's face, when she showed up at his gate, was a mask of barely concealed rage. "This isn't over, Harrow," she spat. Jacob leaned against the gate, the old lock back in place. "Oh, it's just beginning." Clara visited again that evening, bringing a bottle of cheap whiskey to celebrate. They sat on his porch, watching the sunset paint the fields gold. "You gave me hope," she said quietly. "Maybe I'll fight for my land, too." Jacob nodded, realizing this wasn't just about his gate anymore. It was about standing up, about protecting what was yours, about community, not the HOA's version, but the real kind, built on shared struggles and quiet victories. The lock was a small thing, but it had unlocked something bigger. Jacob's legal trap had worked, but it was Clara's courage, her unexpected arrival, that turned the tide. Together, they'd reminded the HOA that power wasn't theirs to take. It belonged to those who fought for it. Yindi.